So thank you for joining us today. We're doing a series on trends that we see that are happening. I mean, we're always fascinated by what is occurring in the market, but more importantly, there are ways to identify these trends and then ask, so what? What is the implication of it? So we have a couple favorites that we've been watching for a while. So Tom, do you want to share one of the first ones?
Yeah, and if I can add a little bit to your introduction, Mary, we're what we're talking about is things that we predicted would happen, and using our tools, we got some insights about the way these trends were going, and it's not about how smart we are. I mean, we get some things wrong, absolutely, but I think the focus of this is, here's a couple things that we predicted using our tools, and our tools are the star, right? You use these tools, and sometimes you can see which way things are heading. And so let's talk about the miracle weight loss drug called Ozempic. I guess probably everybody knows what Ozempic is, but if you don't know, pharmaceutical company has harnessed lizard's venom to allow people to, especially diabetes sufferers, to magically lose weight. And by way of prediction, I guess, over the course of years and doing a lot of competitive analysis in our workshops, um, when we had people try to identify indirect competitors, new competitors that they might predict would come onto the scene, many times they were just way too conservative or said, I don't know, everything's been thought of already, and we'd say, no, you have to think broader, you have to think broader, you have to think broader. And sometimes, like, we would be working in like the bariatric medicine space, where they do the weight loss surgery, the stomach bands, all that stuff. People say, oh yeah, well, should I put some magic weight loss pill on my indirect competitor list? And the fact of the matter is we'd say yes. Technology is amazing, and lo and behold, here we are a couple of years later, and there's a magic weight loss pill, and it's called Ozempic. So that's kind of a prediction that we made almost tongue in cheek, but we knew that stuff like this could happen. I guess that creates some rules that people should, think of or pay attention to when it comes to indirect competitors, right?
What I thought, yeah, what I thought was a signal was watching how other industries started contacting Ozempic's leaders, like food companies and clothing companies, to say, is this real and what are we going to do about it? So, watching how their reaction was to it was interesting. And that that the insurance companies, are part of our, watch out was not only just seen, as Tom said, a prediction, but our stakeholder map is always rolling around in the back of our head. And when we heard this, we thought, how will the insurance companies, if you have this onslaught going for this magic pill, at what point do they draw a line and say, okay, this really isn't diabetes anymore? And we're starting to see that pushback as well. So I thought that was an interesting element of the prediction to watch out for.
It gives us a really great frame as well when we're in workshops, and we've all struggled here saying, because you're asking people to imagine a new indirect competitor that will disrupt their market. And that's one, it's inherently hard to do. And frankly, if you could see with such clarity as to what it would be, you're better off putting your money and effort in there, trying to own that, right? So it's very, very difficult. But now with this story, we're able to say, what would kill your business? Almost kill it stone dead if something happened, if you could find a way, if you could transport yourself between London and New York, like they do in the Star Trek movies. That's destroyed the airline industry overnight, right? No, of course, that's not really feasible. But thinking about what could actually kill you, we often say, don't we, that the direct competitors can hurt you, but the indirects can kill you. Maybe that's a useful frame to think, what would happen? What could happen that would ruin your day, your business's day, in terms of your current value offer? That's another way to frame it up through stories like this.
I love it. And just to wrap that one up, because we got a couple others that we want to talk about, is we wrote an article about this. That was entitled is yours the only B2B business that won't be affected by Ozempic? In other words, not only do you have to think broadly about technologies, a magic weight loss pill, but there's so many industries now, clothing industries, if you can imagine, even the airlines with, less weight on their planes because people are losing weight. You also have to think about stuff that's happening that you think is outside of your industry that could impact your industry. It's hard. It's hard. But doing so kind of sets you up for the future. So that's Ozempic.
Yeah.
What else we got, Mary?
Yeah, I want to talk about Peloton. And there's a category that we called the pandemic darlings. And during the pandemic, we were watching them, and we have a lot of podcasts on, Peloton, Netflix, Wayfair. They were all favored because of the mindset that we were all in and the market situation. And so as the market started to shift, we started seeing different behaviors with the companies. And so what we said back in early 2022 is, uh-oh, Peloton's got some cracks in it because we're watching them drop the price of their bikes by $400. And we asked, does that make sense for the target segment that they're looking at? And then what's the competition? Is now that when the gyms start opening up again, is that an indirect competitor to that? Will that people want to go back and have a social, way of doing their exercises? So we started challenging ourselves in a lot of different ways to say, can Peloton be strong enough to pull this off? And they even introduced their treadmill, which got pulled off because it was in a lawsuit. And they did product placements in movies that, like the guy died. It was just a lot of missteps. And then they tried to partner with Lululemon. And so at the time that we made our prediction, their stock price was $35, and now it's down to $6. So, over the last couple of years, we just saw that in all of the things that we look at, the trends analysis, the indirect competitor segmentation, we kept challenging it and hoping that they could turn it around. But it's falling pretty flat, even though Tom loves their app.
I do love their app. And so that might be, maybe the saving grace if more people discover that Peloton app. I maintain a gym membership with a hefty monthly fee here in Tampa where I live. But as you might imagine, we're all on the road so much, that Peloton app is amazing, and I use it on the road as my virtual gym, and I have not found another app with as many choices and more. No other app has more ability to customize a workout for you exactly what you want to do. You have 20 minutes, you have 10 minutes, you have 5 minutes, you have 40 minutes. Do you want to do strength training? You want to do cardio? They got it all, and a variety of instructors too. So hopefully that will
so
help.
Tom's in that segment. So we clearly
Yeah.
have heard a segment passionate person talk about it. And that's why their stock is at least at 6 and not 0, maybe.
Yeah, it's all because of the Tom effect. That was advocacy. We should point out that other fitness apps are available
Yeah, they are.
to be balanced. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah,
it's
Sean,
interesting.
anything to add about tools on this one?
I think with Peloton, it's one of those things when you look back on it, you've got secular and cyclical trends, and the one of the long-term sure things that you can bet on. With hindsight, they're easy to spot. China's increasing importance in global economic terms, or if you want to be slightly more scaremongery, that China's massive increase in regional military power is predictable, ongoing, and will continue. We can see this. Those sorts of trends are easy to spot, but when you're in business, I think the hard thing to do is to distinguish between the two. Back in the 80s, I had my hair permed and dyed blonde. There are photographs of this. I'm keeping them under lock and key so no one can ever get them. But
Please
at the
bring them to the
time,
next podcast.
I thought that look with jacket sleeves rolled up was gonna, that was the look. Little did I know that in just a few short years' time, I would look ridiculous. And any photographic evidence from that time doesn't stand scrutiny. But that's the thing about short-term trends. In the moment, everyone jumps on board, and it's similar. And you think about home fitness is not a new thing. being stuck at home through a pandemic is. So a little confluence of events there. We had smart technology, quality apparatus, and confinement led to this growth. And while that will drive a spike, it doesn't necessarily create sustainability because things revert back. And as Tom pointed out, using the app is perfect. Now, it's a whole different business model from shipping $1,000 bikes around the world, right? It's hence the stock price. But maybe that's the key lesson here. We talk about these trends. When we look at trends, we try and think about, is this long term, or is this something that's going to be a blip? And that's what you have to watch out for.
One more?
Anything to add, Tom?
Got time?
Yeah, let's do one more. All right, so
Disney Plus.
I'm stuck on Sean having a perm, and I just
Yeah, no. Sean wants to talk about. I'll take Mary. Let me do the moderator's role because you're just distracted. Sean wants to talk about something we saw with Disney Plus.
Well, it goes back to this idea of confinement. Streaming services. We're all familiar. Netflix being the OG streaming platform, and through lockdown, through the pandemic, a massive increase in people consuming entertainment at home, and therefore really lighting a fire under the streaming services. And an interesting debate that we had some time ago, and Tom, I think there may be an article on this as well, right? We talked about how Disney faced a choice. They have, through their acquisitions, through Marvel, through Star Wars, they've got perhaps the richest content library of any entertainment business on the planet, which is very valuable if they were to rent it to other streaming services, if they were just to leverage their asset by renting it. But they chose to go direct. And we had spotted that sort of trend that as technology allowed and as distribution became less critical, direct to consumer, particularly in B2B, direct to business, was a model that we saw growing. And Disney's decision to follow that trend, to set up their own streaming service, to promote their own content, was copied by other businesses. I think you guys have seen it in some pretty unusual places, right?
Yeah, we thought it pointed towards a trend that we had been seeing in some of our workshops almost sporadically, but the article said we thought that now was the time that if you are a B2B to C kind of company, like a medical device company that sells devices mainly to doctors and hospitals, but you wondered, should I create some pull-through demand by creating awareness amongst patients so that, of our medical device, so somebody has this condition, should they ask their doctor for it? Whereas in the past, they relied on their doctor to make the recommendation. And since then, we have seen many of our clients in sort of what you might think of as esoteric kind of industries who are now communicating with end users to create brand awareness for their devices or their products. Things like wound care, like wound closure, like negative pressure wound bandages, where there's some targeted investment that those kinds of companies are making in reaching patients or consumers. We've seen more and more of it since that article. So I guess we want to say we were right, and our trends tool worked once again there.
Our tools rock. One thing I wanted to add to that, Tom, is not so much about the prediction, but if you look at how Disney's progressing with their endeavors, we could have been tempted to think that's really going to be a strong headwind for Netflix. They're going to lose a lot of content that they can't show. They're going to have more competition. They're going to have to rely more on self-production, which is inherently expensive, rather than having a back catalog of content. Cut a long story short, Netflix are doing okay. As we record this, they've found different ways to adapt. And Disney, while making great headway and great success, is also finding some of the limits of having a sort of single pathway, and they're having to rethink their strategy. And that's the beauty of what we do, that even though you might say this is the right decision, let's take our content and wrap it around our own streaming service, But that's never the end of the game, because somebody will react. Somebody will change the rules again. Things will shift, and you have to be constantly on your feet. And it's always worth remembering that just because a trend displays itself and then plays out, it's not the end of the story. It's often the start.
Yeah. You know, it's funny is if we really were really good at predicting, then we would be millionaires and we would be, you know, like we'd be off on islands somewhere, right? But the fact is that it is true. A while ago, Ginny Ertl, one of our dear friends and colleagues, had introduced us to a framework called What, So What, Now What. And recently HBR just published an article. They made it a little bit more complicated than that, but essentially it came down to anytime you do have a trend and you're watching it and you're using some of the tools that we're describing, it's critical to say, you know, what's going on, and then so what, and not only so what for us, but so what for your customers and other stakeholders, like, you know, insurance, and we mentioned. So the so what, and then the money word is now what. You know, so what are you going to do about it? And as Sean said, you know, it might be interesting, but unless you mobilize some type of, you know, of resources and energy around some of these big things, your company's going to be like a blockbuster sitting in a graveyard somewhere. So it really is important. And you can see that it doesn't take a lot of tools, but it just takes really staying you know, aware of what's happening and then using a few things and then making sure that the company reacts in appropriate ways. So any other closing thoughts, Sean or Tom?
I would say that our trend tool does a bit of the heavy lifting there as well, because using our trend tool, it kind of highlights those trends that are either high probability and high impact or low probability and high impact, which anything with high impact, that would, a trend that would have high impact on your business, you should react to. And it causes you to ask the key question that many companies miss. What's the impact of this trend on my customers? How's it going to change their needs? Because a lot of times we've seen our clients jump from a high impact trend to what they're going to do about it. They miss the middle step about how it's going to impact their customers, and it may not impact their customers in a way that is meaningful. But if it does, it usually suggests some new needs that they're going to have. And by addressing those needs, we say our trend tool helps you anticipate needs, which is maybe one of the hardest things to do in business. But there you go.
Yeah, and stay ahead of your competition. Right? Make your
Okay. Well, I got to go to my hairstylist.
We're gonna find that photo and
not
post
looking
it somewhere.
If you're only listening to us and you're not looking, especially next week when Sean's going to bring those pictures, you want to be on the video podcast.
Yeah, that'll be a trend that you didn't predict correctly, Tom.
Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you so much for joining us and good luck with your trends and predictions.
Thank you.